Welcome to the show. Welcome to Your Thought Life podcast. I am your host, Michael Anderson. Today we're jumping into the topic of who is the inner critic and why is it so loud? And I know from time to time, all of us can relate to what I'm about to say. And effectively, it's that tiny judgmental voice in our heads that constantly point out our flaws. Anyone can relate to what I'm saying here? I'm sure you can. According to a study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, most people experience self-criticism regularly. Yes, regularly. So don't ever feel like this is you doing and experiencing this all by yourself, because that would be the furthest from the truth. So today, what we endeavor to do is to talk about that inner critic, to explore who this voice is, why it's so loud, and more importantly, how to turn the volume down so it doesn't interrupt or interfere with that which we desire to do for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our careers, for our pursuits. To do this, I think there's a fundamental understanding that we have to secure right out of the gates, and that is the inner critic is very judgmental. It doubts just about everything, and it acts as the chief critic in your life. It often shows up when you're trying something new, facing a somewhat difficult challenge. You're outside of your so-called comfort zone, or you could even just be going about doing your daily life, and some small component that's outside of the norm pops up. He springs into action, or she springs into action. And the voice, unfortunately, can be incredibly harsh, right? Making you feel very inadequate and sometimes anxious. Why? Because it makes it seem like it's your voice. And our voice, irrespective of how it is being utilized, has a tremendous amount of credibility. Psychologically speaking, the inner voice often stems from past experiences, particularly those that are rooted in our childhood, which is why much of the work that we do for the folks that we serve creates a set of circumstances where we have to go back and deal with that childhood in order to help people get the breakthrough that is lasting and permanent. Perhaps you've had overly critical parents, teachers, those that were in authority when you were in this very impressionable period, birth through about age 7, says science. And if that's the case, you just got to know that how you are today doesn't have to remain the same. You should also know that these external criticisms that entered into our lives were internalized over a period of time. So we repetition in beliefs, biases, and behaviors. And because we were subject to these individuals for a prolonged period of time, the repetition component was present, such that now it has helped to shape and form who we are today. It's important for us, or rather, it's important for me to point out that your brain is always in a mode of trying to protect you from potential pain or disappointment or anything that could go wrong. And when you have this particular setup where it wants to see the same pattern day after day with no interruption, no wonder when you try to step outside of the comfort zone or outside of the daily pattern, you begin to really experience this inner voice, this inner critic in a real way. And this is the loudness that we refer to. It gets incredibly loud and boisterous anytime that the pattern is attempting to be interrupted. The pattern of safety, the pattern of normalcy, the pattern of day to day, this is how we do life. from the time you wake up to the manner in which you prepare your morning to the time and the directions that you take to go to work. Everything is aligning perfectly with that norm. And when it doesn't, this voice gets very rambunctious, and so much so that it will halt us in our tracks. It's been said through a study by the American Psychology Association, they found that people who are highly self critical are more likely to experience depression and anxiety. The louder the inner critic, the more it can impact your mental health. I think it's paramount that we all come to an understanding as well that anytime that we're going to do something that is pattern disrupting, pattern interrupting, this is going to happen. It happens to all of us. It happens to some of the highest performers that I have relationships with. No one is exempt from this. So, what we're saying is, we're not stuffing this. We're recognizing the source. We're recognizing why it's so loud. And then we're creating for ourselves coping mechanisms so that we can move forward without this specific voice being dominant in our lives. This brings us very naturally into what we call the actionable section. This is where I provide for you tips, tricks, techniques, hacks that you can begin to place in your mind and in your heart. So when the day comes and you need to act, you will have a portfolio of tools that you can go and make a withdrawal from so that you can handle yourself differently, such that the critical voice doesn't end up handling you. Number one, identify the voice and name it. The first step, family, is to recognize that your inner voice is speaking up. There has been something, let me say that differently. Something has taken place that interrupts a pattern, interrupts a norm, and now this guy or gal needs to help you understand that he's concerned or she's concerned about what's getting ready to take place. Immediately after that, a whole bunch of hypotheticals are going to happen. When you identify the voice and name it, then you can have a meaningful conversation. I know this sounds strange. Then you can have a meaningful conversation with him or her by name and begin to really understand why the judgment is so harsh. You can begin to pay attention to the tone in which he or she is using. You can begin to understand and reconcile why this situation is so scary to him or her. Big idea here is, remember that he or she is there to protect you. And once you can identify the voice and once you have named the voice, then you can begin the next piece. The next piece is to challenge the critic. And this is where you're asking yourself, if the criticism is true, you're asking yourself effectively, where can I go get evidence? In fact, when you get advanced, you'll begin to ask them for this. But where can I get evidence to show that this is absolutely for sure going to happen? The hypotheticals that are taking place, the criticism, and so forth. When you do this and you seek out the facts, then you subconsciously and consciously take back control of the situation. And then you are able to then voice your opinion through the challenge. And if necessary, right, you see that all of these exaggerations and hypotheticals don't really have merit in proof. This is a fantastic gateway for you because Now you can begin to do life differently, family. You can begin to move through these different stages that require you to go outside of your comfort zone with a greater degree of confidence, because now the voice doesn't control you, but rather you control it. And if you're not getting any evidence, it's quite all right, because 85% of the time you're not going to get any evidence. And of the 15% of the time that you do get the evidence, it's going to be just a fraction of the hypotheticals and the negativity that your inner critic made up to protect you. And this, I believe, creates a natural move into you practicing self-compassion. And too often, we have been our worst critic. And we have done so because we have bought in to the inner critic having authority in our lives because it sounds just like us, right? And it's coming from within us. Two very, very important data points there. And once you get to a certain state, or you begin to practice this and you move through various states such that now you're in control, this is the time for you to put on kindness toward you, toward your inner critic. And if in fact you've done some heavy lifting and you've gone back and reconciled in your mind and heart some of the things you learned in childhood or were influenced by during your childhood, and certain individuals that you've decided to let go, let them off the hook, forgive them. This is all within the arena of self-compassion. You don't do this for them. You do this for you. So in the same way, when you make a mistake, you're not beating yourself up anymore. Instead, you simply acknowledge it. You say, I'm going to learn from it. You don't wallow or ruminate. You simply move on, right? And that is the recipe, family, for dealing with this in a very succinct way. I believe that each of you is called to a life where your inner critic is not in charge. And we've given you 3 science-based methodologies that you can use or put into your arsenal, your toolkit, so that when the time arises, and it won't be long from now, right? That's not funny. You can first identify the voice and name it. You can then challenge the critic looking for evidence. And then you can begin to practice self-compassion for yourself and for others. Family, these are easy to deploy, and you'll have absolutely great success when you choose to utilize these. And as Eleanor Roosevelt once said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. You have the power to control your inner voice. I'm asking you to begin doing that now. And by understanding where that critical voice is coming from, what its intent is, and why it gets so loud, now you are empowered with everything that you need to move forward in a way that promotes peace, that promotes the achievement of your goals and the outcomes that you desire. And thank you so much for joining me today for today's episode. Feel free to connect with us on Linktree. The link is available in the show notes. I want to remind you that you are enough, you can do it, and you are uniquely equipped to realize your goals. Until next time, take care and keep pushing forward. Take care and keep taming that inner critic.